A major Wall Street institution is making strange moves with physical silver. The data reveals a pattern that precedes market earthquakes. JP Morgan, America's dominant silver custodian, has been quietly relocating, reclassifying, and removing massive quantities of precious metal from transparent reporting systems. Vault records show unusual transfers. Storage categories are being reshuffled without explanation. Metal that should appear in public ledgers is simply gone. This isn't conjecture or internet gossip. The numbers tell the story. Official filings reveal movements that defy standard banking procedures. And when an institution controlling this much physical silver acts in silence, it signals that powerful forces are preparing for something significant. Consider JP Morgan's unique position. They operate as the nation's premier silver vault operator, safeguarding metal for sovereign governments, investment firms, institutional players, and wealthy individuals. Their storage infrastructure spans the country. Their market influence exceeds public understanding. So when their metal starts relocating, markets react. But these particular transfers look different. Substantial volumes are being recategorized between operational classifications. Certain holdings get marked as eligible inventory rather than registered stock. Other quantities vanish from disclosure documents completely. At the same time, physical dealers report alarming supply constraints. When vaults hide metal, markets wake up. These contradictory realities don't coexist naturally unless preparation is underway. And here's what should concern every investor. Historical vault behavior like this has preceded every significant silver market disruption. Examine 2010 and 2011, study 2019 leading into 2020, review early 2023 data points. Abnormal inventory transfers appeared before each price explosion, each supply crisis, each moment when physical availability evaporated. So, what's driving current behavior? Why would JP Morgan suddenly restrict silver access? Why are institutional redemptions being met with silence instead of replacement metal? Why is material exiting transparency frameworks rather than entering them? Who benefits from these transfers, and what's the end game? More critically, what information does JP Morgan possess that retail investors lack? Because financial institutions don't conceal precious metals without expecting severe shortages, or anticipating liquidity breakdowns, or forecasting industrial consumption surges, or predicting price containment failures, or preparing for systemic market disruptions. Right now, warning indicators point toward all 5 scenarios simultaneously. Yet JP Morgan offers 0 public statements, no announcements, no commentary, no disclosure, just strategic silence and disappearing metal. Meanwhile, industry sources suggest something more troubling. Portions of this silver may be entering undisclosed long-term holding facilities rather than remaining market accessible. If accurate, this means the institution values hidden metal over available metal, which reveals everything about future market direction. Banks only conceal silver when they anticipate demand overwhelming supply. They only limit transparency when they foresee price discovery mechanisms failing. They only transfer metal off official records when they expect system-wide disruptions. And JP Morgan executes these maneuvers quietly precisely when global inventories decline, industrial usage accelerates, and purchase premiums escalate, almost as if they're reinforcing defenses against approaching turbulence. Or perhaps they already see the turbulence forming on radar. This pattern has historical precedent. Each time silver inventories behaved this way, each time metal disappeared from public accounting, each time the bank shifted silver into opaque classifications, massive market events followed. Now the identical pattern emerges again. Let's examine the mechanics. Recent months brought unusual observations from market analysts. JP Morgan's eligible silver, meaning metal they own outright or hold for private accounts, suddenly expanded dramatically. Simultaneously, registered silver, the metal designated for market delivery, plummeted sharply. Translation? The silver remained in storage facilities. It simply became unavailable for delivery. Registered to eligible means unavailable to you. This represents one of commodity market's most powerful warning signals. When banks transfer metal from registered to eligible status, they're declaring they don't want public access. They don't want delivery requests. They don't want market utilization. They're securing it for undisclosed purposes or entities. But here's the unexpected development. Every major eligible silver surge has historically preceded system-level stress events. The 2011 final silver peak, pre-crisis vault positioning in 2019, physical shortages throughout 2020 global shutdowns, early supply chain tightening signals in 2023. And now, the 2024-2025 surge exceeds all previous episodes. Why? What motivates JP Morgan to suddenly sequester silver at this magnitude? Why prevent delivery access? Why convert it to classifications beyond public reach? Only 3 rational explanations exist. First, they anticipate catastrophic silver shortages. Industrial requirements are skyrocketing across solar energy, electric vehicles, semiconductor manufacturing, medical technology, and defense systems. The bank may be positioning ahead of an unavoidable supply deficit. Second, they expect a COMEX liquidity catastrophe. If excessive investors simultaneously demand physical delivery, the paper trading system collapses. Concealing metal protects institutional interests before the stampede starts. Third, they're securing silver for confidential buyers or governmental entities. When sovereign powers enter markets discreetly, banks remove metal from public visibility. Currently, all three conditions exist simultaneously. Meanwhile, retail merchants report the most intense physical demand in years. Inventory exhausted, shipments postponed, no confirmed delivery schedules. Premium adjustments appearing constantly. This shouldn't coincide with JP Morgan quietly accumulating and concealing additional silver, unless they possess information the public lacks, unless they're preparing for circumstances where physical silver becomes so scarce that exposing their actual holdings would trigger immediate panic, unless they comprehend how vulnerable the entire silver infrastructure has become, and they're repositioning before mass awareness arrives. Because silver differs fundamentally from gold. Central banks don't hoard it in massive reserves. It gets consumed permanently by industries powering modern civilization, and those industries expand while silver production doesn't. This is the critical pressure point JP Morgan recognizes approaching. This explains why the pattern repeats. This is why the silver vanishes. This is why the bank acts now, quietly, strategically, aggressively. They're preparing for the moment when markets finally grasp the reality. Sufficient silver doesn't exist. Not for investors, not for industry, not for the system. And that moment no longer sits years ahead. It's accelerating rapidly. What happens when global markets discover JP Morgan was concealing silver because the supply crisis already existed? What happens when the revelation breaks? Because JP Morgan isn't casually shuffling silver around. They're repositioning ahead of an event the public hasn't yet comprehended. And once this event strikes, the silver market won't merely tighten. It will explode. Here's why. Currently, every major pressure point throughout the silver ecosystem is converging simultaneously. Industrial demand explodes. Global mining production remains flat. Large COMEX redemptions accelerate. Retail shortages become normalized. Premiums climb despite stable spot pricing. Banks restrict deliverable metal. Vaults report inconsistent transfer flows. This combination has never manifested at this scale. And JP Morgan's actions don't just confirm it, they magnify it. When America's largest silver custodian quietly locks down metal instead of releasing it to open markets, they're not speculating, they're preparing. And here's the inflection point. Eventually, someone will request delivery, and the market won't possess the metal. That's when truth explodes. The moment COMEX or LBMA or a major refinery cannot deliver fully, even for one significant contract, the message becomes undeniable. The paper silver system is backed by far less physical metal than everyone assumed. When that happens, two forces hit instantly. Institutional panic purchasing and public realization. Once the panic ignites, it stops following financial logic and starts following survival logic. Because silver isn't optional for industry. Technology cannot function without it. Energy cannot scale without it. Defense cannot operate without it. Medicine cannot advance without it. When industries panic, they buy aggressively and permanently withdraw silver from circulation. That's when the repricing event begins. Not a spike, not a rally, a repricing. A complete revaluation of silver based on availability, not technical charts. Scarcity, not market sentiment. Industrial necessity, not speculation. JP Morgan understands this. That's why they're locking down metal. That's why inventories shift to hidden classifications. That's why metal leaves public visibility. That's why nothing gets explained. They're positioning ahead of a global silver shock, one that could make 2026 the year physical silver becomes functionally unaffordable. Because once the world realizes the system contains far less silver than it claims, prices don't rise gradually. They leap, they gap upward, they reset permanently. And the only participants protected in that moment are those who already secured their silver before the repricing commenced. That's what JP Morgan is doing, silently, aggressively, strategically. The only question remaining for the world is this. If America's biggest bank is hiding silver, what do they see approaching that we don't? Because when a bank this massive moves like this, history teaches us only one thing. Something significant is happening. And when it finally emerges into public view, it will be too late to react.